Hey sis, and welcome to the Beauty System Podcast, where we discuss the science behind beauty. We are your hosts, Maya Elaine
and Maya Nicole, and together we will dissect important topics for women of color with the goal of making science, technology, engineering, and math concepts more accessible and relatable to everyday life.
Let's get into this episode.
Welcome to the Beauty System Podcast. We are a podcast that's dedicated to dissecting topics regarding STEM and beauty for women of color. We're so glad that you have the opportunity to join us again. We have a great conversation today. But before we get started, let's introduce our host. That's us. Yeah.
Our guest.
Our guest. Let's introduce our guest, who's going to give us a wealth of information regarding the science behind skincare.
Okay, guys, so today we have Anay Castro. She's a board-certified physician's assistant with 16 years of experience. And prior to working in dermatology, she practiced in the emergency department, where she gained extensive clinical and procedural experience. Ms. Castro holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Shout out to Chapel Hill. And a master's degree in physician's assistant studies from East Carolina University. So she's well educated. She is interested in adult and pediatric dermatology and enjoys performing medical and cosmetic procedures. Anay also loves to spend time with her patients and offer comprehensive dermatology evaluations. She spends a lot of time researching and learning about clinical resources, treatments, and the newest technology that offers solutions for skin conditions, especially for people of color. Ms. Castro was born and raised in Cuba, and she is bilingual, proficient in English and Spanish. So welcome to the Beauty System Podcast, Anay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a very... This topic is I'm very passionate about it, actually. Yes.
Well, we're glad that we have you. One of the things that we like to do before we get into all the sciencey stuff is we want people to understand that, like, scientists, people who have this wealth of technical knowledge, are also people. Mm-hmm. And so we like to do this thing called human verification, which is just a way to a cool icebreaker and a way for people to get to know you a little bit better. So today, our human verification is, if you have one beauty product for the rest of your life, what would it be that you cannot live without?
Oh my God, there's so many. But the one, sunscreen. It would probably be sunscreen. And I love one that is by SkinCeuticals.
Okay.
Yeah, the SkinCeuticals sunscreen. It's SPF 50. It's kind of light. It has a little bit of like a sheer. It blends pretty good with the skin. I love that, but it would be sunscreen. If you have to pick, the best and most comprehensive anti-aging product would be sunscreen for everybody.
Didn't know that.
For every color. Yes, sunscreen.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we were thinking about this question. We were like thinking about all of the makeup products we have, all the moisturizers. Mm-hmm. So it's really good that you highlight sunscreen, especially in a conversation with people of color. And we will get into that in our questions, the myths around sunscreen for people of color. Okay, awesome. We want to get started. So this is a beauty system. The last four letters, science, technology, engineering, and math are our focus. And one of the things we like to do while we are talking about these topics is educate people on all of the possibilities in STEM. So first, we want to start with physician's assistant. What does it mean to be a physician's assistant? And how did you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
So a physician assistant is basically a licensed clinician. And we can practice medicine in any specialty or every setting. So rural, urban, like I said, any specialty. Usually you get your 4-year degree, your college degree. And it doesn't have to have, as long as you have the prerequisites, it's just like med school, as long as you have your prerequisites, you can, your major can be anything, And then after that, I had to take the GRE. Most of the programs now are master levels. Mm-hmm. And, you apply for PA school. there's many actually in North Carolina. I was fortunate to get into ECU because, that's a state school.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a long time ago. That was in 2004. Woof. And in 2004, but it's between 2.5 years. Actually, when I graduated, it's not on the bio that I gave you, but when I graduated, physician's assistants can have the opportunity now to specialize too. You can do a residency. It's not as long as the medical residency. Mine was about a year, about 15 months. But I did a residency in general surgery, critical care, and trauma. So I worked in the ER for many years in Wake Med, which is a level 1 trauma center. So I did all the high power adrenaline stuff.
Yeah.
And, but, eventually, I became a mother and it was time for me to change. And that was one of the things that I like about being a physician assistant. So one of the things that attracted me was the fact that I could practice in any setting and any specialty. So I did emergency medicine for 13 years. And then I went into dermatology. And the reason I chose dermatology is because while working in the ER, I saw that there was a void. I had a lot of patients with rashes and other conditions, like, and we're going to get into it probably later about like recurrent boils, things like that. And patients of color, are often misdiagnosed all the time. So, I wanted to do something that had meaning and also that would allow me to balance my life, and still, do things that I wanted to learn, like cosmetic things. I love, I like the medical side, but I love the cosmetic side because they kind of like come together. Especially in a skin of color, because we're going to get into hyperpigmentation. And then it would allow me to spend more time with my son. I have an 8-year-old who's like a tornado. And, but yeah, to spend more time with my family, I think that was very important. And I love dermatology. I've learned so much. It's like you never, ever stop learning.
Awesome. Yeah. That's really good background. I really like what you said about, having that experience and really feeling like you're called to that based on what the need that you're seeing in that environment. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about that. One of the things that I think a lot of people, when they think about skincare, and I know growing up for us, there was just I would always just like want to explore skincare. And like, I think that was around the time when those like astringent pads were like really big in the thing. So it's just like, I felt like I need this. I feel like I need that. But can you really just break down to us, like, what is a healthy skincare routine? Like, what does that actually need?
So the skin, our skin produces its own oil actually. And, the skin, I always tell the same thing. Likes to be clean. It's cleansing, moisturizing, sunscreen. And then those are the the consistent things that we should do every day, morning and night. And then everything else kind of everything else kind of falls in between. Like for instance, in the morning, after you cleanse, if you have a morning medication, let's say somebody has acne, then you'll put your morning acne medication. I always recommend in the morning because we're going to be out and about to do an antioxidant type of serum. So vitamin C is great. Plus also vitamin C. So not only fights free radicals, but also it's brightening. Okay. And not all vitamin C serums are the same or products are the same. You have to get one that has at least between 15 and 20% vitamin C. If not, you're not getting much out of it. Okay. And then moisturize and sunscreen. Now, moisturizing, it depends. Moisturizing, if you have oily skin, which usually happens when we're younger, I always or in the summertime, I recommend a moisturizing lotion. So something that is going to moisturize, but it's not going to like overload you. It's not going to be too heavy, or too thick on the skin. And then now you do the same thing. It's usually, wash and then whatever medication you like to use. At this time you can actually add, say, hyaluronic acid serum, or another vitamin C again, if you like. I always recommend a retinol, especially after starting in your 20s. A retinol, or if you have acne, I usually will prescribe a retinoid, something stronger, and then you moisturize as well. But by the way, hyaluronic acid, I always recommend you want to apply the hyaluronic acid on skin that's a little bit wet, like so it's a little dampened.
Okay.
Because you're going to absorb it better. You're going to get a better use out of the hyaluronic acid because it's a hydrophilic product. So you want to have a little bit of water for it to really plump the skin.
One of the things that you mentioned was free radicals. I know that that's not a term that a lot of people understand. Can we just like double click on that really quickly? Like, what are free radicals?
So free radicals are like this, let's say, molecules, that cause, that oxidize, have an they make oxidation states. They just oxidize in this case, your skin. And so they cause damage, and then you can lose hydration, collagen. So it's things that damage in the context of this, it would be something that will damage the skin.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned before I go to a completely different topic, one of the things that you just mentioned was doing the same thing day and night. And I know you said cleanse, moisturize, sunscreen. And I think that on the sunscreen portion, and the first time, for those of you who don't know, I met Anay when I went to a dermatology appointment, and I was just really frustrated. I saw a whole bunch of people before I got there, and that was the very first time that I felt like someone was listening to my skin and telling me exactly how things are, number one, showing up for me specifically with my darker skin tone. But number two, what are the things that are specific to my skin tone and my skin composition that regard me changing, like making minor tweaks to like what the original or what the base diagnosis would be. In the midst of me getting a more established skin routine, I remember you recommending that I do the AM and the PM sunscreen. And in the sunscreen term, for people of color in general, there's like this myth that you don't need sunscreen as much, or if you like, when I go outside, just because I don't get as much of a skin, like a sunburn, that, oh, I'm good. Like it doesn't burn, it doesn't hurt. So I don't really need it. Can you just talk a little bit about why sunscreen is necessary and why it's necessary morning and night?
So at night, let me just say at night, maybe you don't need it as much unless you're going out and there's going to be like bright lights. I would recommend it because you can get UV radiation from lights. Okay. Like regular lights, not just sun, not just the sun. So, at night, I can, if you don't use it, I'm okay with that. But, like I said, if you're like a DJ or someone who's, out at night a lot, I say, use a little bit. It doesn't hurt. But it is important to use sunscreen, not just because I do think it's kind of a myth. It's true that, brown and black skin, they do have a higher, they have more melanin. So you will get greater sun protection, and you do get a lot more protection in terms of, like, say, getting skin cancer, although it does happen. Okay. And Black people can also get sunburn. I want to make that if you're in the sun for a long time, you will get a sunburn. And you can get a rash. But in skin of color, one of the things I would say, I don't know, between 85, 90% of, especially the women and men that I see, you get a lot of hyperpigmentation precisely because you have more melanin. And so this sunscreen is not only to help you with staying youthful, protecting your skin from free radical damage, and you end up with like skin cancer, but also from hyperpigmentation. I think that's one of the biggest things. If you protect your skin with sunscreen, you will have less, hyperpigmentation, especially what we call post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So what is that? Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is a brown or black person, if they get acne, we can heal the acne, but it leaves a mark, right? Or in men, they have bumps because of shaving. It will leave a mark. You can get from the folliculitis. Same thing. You can get hyperpigmentation from that, from psoriasis, from eczema. So anything that causes inflammation of the skin on a darker person, it would leave hyperpigmentation. And that's why I think sunscreen is a must. It's a must. Not only, and then, there's the added benefit of you would look even younger, but that's why it's so important, because again, one of the most common complaints that I get in my clinical setting is hyperpigmentation. There's also this thing called, condition called melasma. That's another one that shows up a lot in actually Hispanics, Asians, but also in brown and black people. And, for melasma, that's a must. That is the product. Like you have, there's other treatments, but sunscreen, you need to be consistent with sunscreen, even when cooking, by the way.
Hold on. Pause.
In patients with melasma, the vapor, like you can actually get pigment. The pigment can get, you can get activation of the pigment, or, you can get hyperpigmentation. If you're like in a kitchen, say that you're a cook, you can.
Wow. Did not even think about that one.
I just started getting like hip to the whole you need sunscreen thing not too long ago, but I've been trying to be faithful with it. And what sometimes I think I was like, oh, I'm not going to be in the sun. Like I'm not going to the beach. I don't need sunscreen. But recently I was like hearing and understanding, like even if you're like by windows in your house, like if you're getting like sun exposure, sunscreen is important. So I think that's the cooking part. That's a whole new level.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that one. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Again, I usually like do that more for people. Like if it's a person who's a chef or a cook, but especially people that have melasma. I do recommend that. And like you said, windows also, I tell people if you drive a lot, if you're on the road a lot, you have to actually think of reapplying sunscreen. On both sides, but think about it, especially your left side. Some people have more hyperpigmentation on the left side because that's the one that's closer to the window, and also like the dorsum of your hands. Like the back of your hands. Think about it. You're driving, and the windshield is right there. So you have, I usually say, sunscreen all over your face, your neck, your ears. Don't neglect the ears, and then also, the hands.
So we thought we were doing it right. But now my ears and my hands are somewhere because I have not been like okay, so we're correcting. Know better, do better.
Right.
We are going to do face, neck, ears.
Yeah.
And
but it's right. And think about it. You see it more on lighter skinned people, but you see those little dots, that they have. That's usually that's sun. That's lentigo. That's from the sun.
Wow. Okay. So we've learned a lot already, but one thing that we've focused on is skin of color. And so you mentioned earlier that a lot of things are misdiagnosed. Can we talk about some of the most commonly misdiagnosed skin conditions for people of color?
It's not a joke, but I would say almost, in the runs, if like you experience that. If you go to somebody that doesn't know a lot, almost everything gets misdiagnosed. One that particularly almost everything can get misdiagnosed in skin of color, and that's because let's say the inflammatory process, when it shows up on darker skin, it looks different than on lighter skin. And what happens is, and we need to talk about this, most of the dermatological books that are out there, even in academic settings, show lighter skin. The pictures are, I mean, it's incredible how it's light skin. There's some that's shifting. There's been a shift in the past, I would say 10 to 15 years. And obviously there's dermatologists like Dr. Scales, I work with Dr. Jeffrey Scales, in Durham, and he is, I think one of the few Black dermatologists in the area. And, but most of the books you have, when I started dermatology, and because I knew I was going to work with skin of color, I mean, I have some knowledge about that, darker skin, not only for myself, I grew up in an island and, the population is very diverse, but, also because I knew I was going to be doing this job. Right. It was hard for me. I had to actively look for books and learn. Not only, I learned a lot from Dr. Scales, but also like the books, I had to actually, it's not like any other book, I had to intentionally look for books, and there are many. When you talk about clinical trials, you talk about anything, the majority of the things have been done on people that are lighter. So is, part of that systemic racism, but, it shows up, and that's why people get misdiagnosed. The providers, you can actually do your own, your due diligence and try to learn. And like I always say, when in doubt, do a biopsy, even if it's not the skin that you're used to treating. It's so easy to just do a biopsy, and then you'll find out, because under the microscope, the dermatopathologists will know what it is. But anyway, they get misdiagnosed all the time because things show up differently. They look differently. In lighter skin, it's usually more like, you get inflammation, you get a red patch. It's more reddish. Well, in darker skin, it's going to be a little like a darker brown, sometimes purple. It looks completely different, and so you, like for instance, let's pick one, rosacea, which is this adult acne. It's easy. You see a lighter person, it was actually called rosacea because it looks reddish again, but that doesn't mean that darker skin tones don't get rosacea. They do get rosacea. It just looks different. It looks a little more brownish, purplish, but you get the same bumps. And so sometimes they'll tell patients, oh, you have an allergic reaction. Or this one that really, really bothers me all the time is insect bites. You can't have, first of all, that's insulting. And you can't have insect bites for 10 years of your life.
Right.
Okay. Especially it's in the same place all the time. It's not an insect bite. Come on, guy. So I actually, because, of my background, I tend to be, more aggressive too. And also because I think people want to know, so I always, I do biopsies all the time because I think the patient wants to know. So even when I know what it is, I do the biopsy, but, it's interesting because, I mentioned rosacea, and there's another condition called pityriasis rosea. And that's, again, it's because it looks red, but in darker skin tones, it doesn't look red. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. That one's caused by a virus. And that's why you have to visit a dermatologist. But yeah, that's why it's just that because of the melanin content in darker skin. So you're going to see, different tones, like melanin has like different within melanin, there's different pigments. There's like a spectrum. It's actually beautiful, but there's different, tones and different types of melanin. And, but I always, if something has to be taught in school, not only is, be more inclusive, in our books and actually have more people of color going into specialties like dermatology, but also, if when in doubt, please do a biopsy. It's so easy. And then you will not misdiagnose so like I said, I'm very passionate about this and I got off topic, but one of the things that gets, misdiagnosed again is, eczema, even psoriasis, just because it can show up differently. But there's things that are pretty, that if not only do they get misdiagnosed, but they get diagnosed too late. There's one called, it's a form of lymphoma, that cutaneous lymphoma. And what happens is you get these hyperpigmented patches in skin of color. But usually the skin will look thicker, right, as well. So sometimes like, oh, it's eczema. And, that is actually a form of cancer. It's a lymphoma of the skin. And if misdiagnosed or it gets diagnosed too late, it has detrimental effects. It has, and also talking about cancer. So melanoma, yes, it's less common in people of color, but when it shows up, it will show up in places where we don't get a lot of sun. So under the nail, your palms, the bottom of your feet as well. And so it shows up in places that are different than, on your, lighter counterparts. So that's why it's also important. It's not only sunscreen. I tell my patients, like we do with lighter people, everybody should get kind of like a skin physical every year. You should get a skin exam every year. Your scalp, people don't think about it, but the scalp is also like, exposed to the sun. And so like, for instance, lately I've had a couple of Hispanic patients that I've taken cancer from their, from the scalp. Wow. So it will show up, again, in places where you're less likely to look for. And also that misconception that, oh, I am darker, so I'm protected. That's not true. Actually, a lot of people don't know, but Bob Marley died of melanoma. He had from complications of melanoma, but like, he had melanoma. That's what happened.
Wow.
And so that usually, I give that as an example, but
Wow. Yeah. Didn't even know that.
Yeah. And I think you raised an important point about the giving yourself a physical in your skin. Like it's like, that makes complete sense when you put it in context that skin is your biggest organ and it has that connective, it is so much a part of your body that we should also be putting that additional light on it. That was really good. Really good insight.
And I also think one of the things that our audience needs to hear are the different ways that things can show up for them. Because I would have never, if I saw something under my nails or on the bottom of my foot, I would have been like, oh, I just walked. You just dismiss things because you're not taught, you're not educated on it. And I think one of the other things you said with the rosacea, because I know you first gave me that diagnosis when I went to you. I was told all my life that, oh, you just have such beautiful rosy cheeks. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. The bumps are only here and they're always there and it's super red. It can't be just rosy cheeks. So yeah, I think awareness, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I was like, okay, maybe these are not just rosy cheeks, because if that's something that people tell you all the time, you're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong. It's just this. But people need to be aware to, number one, listen to their skin and their bodies. And number two, ask for help and go to the right people. And the right person for what we're talking about in particular is a dermatologist, and particularly one that knows about skin for people of color, or, people of color.
Yeah. And I wanted to tell you.
Go ahead.
So talking about the nails, because I know I might get a lot of calls about this or a lot, and that's okay. I love people when they have curiosity. I like people that are curious and they want to learn. In darker skin tones too, you will have something called melanonychia, meaning you get these lines. They're almost like perfect lines under your nails or toenails. I always say people should get it checked out. That is not melanoma. That's called melanonychia. It's like having a mole, under your nail. But usually that one will show up as a perfect longitudinal line, And you can have it in more than one nail. If you have it on one nail, maybe two, it's worth to have somebody a dermatologist look at it, but I don't want people to panic.
Yeah,
Not everything.
Literally, immediately, I was like, when can I look down at my hands? Immediately.
Not every and melanoma is pretty. It's pretty distinct. Usually melanoma, it has irregular borders. It just looks weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but when in doubt, visit a dermatologist, because I think it's the fact that the infrequent checkups and the lack of awareness, that's the recipe for disaster. And that's why people get either misdiagnosed, part of it, or they get diagnosed too late.
Yeah.
When it's too late. And, but yeah, that, my recommendation is that. And so there's, and to avoid misdiagnosis, I say, go to a dermatologist, and especially one that specializes in skin of color.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's really helpful in terms of like the awareness part of like, there's a lot of, I think, there's not a lot of knowledge, especially around skincare. Like I think growing up, the only thing I really knew about skincare was like, oh, like when you hit puberty, that's like when your skin changes, and that's what you need to be like aware of. But outside of that, there are not a lot of conversations regarding like, what are some of the milestones like that happen in your skin? Like how does your age, and as you like get older, how does that affect and show up in your skin? So can we talk a little bit more about like those milestones, I guess, or like those phases of your skin that we need to be aware of outside of puberty?
Obviously, as we get older, our skin gets a little drier. Also, because you've been living longer, you're going to get more damage, because you're more exposed to the sun. But there's also, in terms of aging, we tend to get more wrinkles. We tend to, we start getting other moles, like for instance, in darker skin tones, we get a lot of the little moles that you see in families. They're not freckles. They're like little, they're DPNs. Yeah. Dermatosis papulosis nigra. And in Hispanic patients, they're going to look more, Hispanics, I feel like they have it not a little more on the neck. I certainly have those. In Black patients, I see it more I see it everywhere on the neck, but a lot on the face. Those are benign. But, those are changes that happen with age. Yeah. It gets drier, more wrinkles. In Black patients, usually they look a little younger because the skin is thicker. So when your skin is thicker, so you see signs of aging are delayed in darker skin tones because the skin is thicker. So you're going to see less wrinkles and a more beautiful skin, a lot longer. But it does happen. But exposure to the sun, I see, and again, because of the content of melanin, you get more hyperpigmentation as you grow. And then also, it gets drier. The skin does get drier, as you get closer to menopause, because of the change in hormones. I think that if you just take care of it, if you just have a routine, and with skin, it's all about consistency. Especially if you have darker skin, you're kind of blessed. I do have to say that.
I feel blessed.
Because the skin is thicker. And, but I wanted to touch, I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry.
No,
it did. I think it did.
Okay. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about too that gets misdiagnosed, or sometimes I feel that there's not a good report when women go to dermatologists, and it's something that affects Black women a lot, and that is alopecia. I do want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
So one of the biggest thing is when you work in dermatology, and especially in women, it can happen with men too, but women, I feel, it's such a vulnerable thing to talk about.
It is.
Because hair is so important, but it's very important for women of color. Okay. I know that since I was a kid, growing up in Cuba, with, I have Black neighbors, so I know. But also, one of the things that really surprised me is the lack of knowledge, you know. So alopecia, it's one of the things in Black women that gets delayed. The diagnosis gets delayed, and also, and it gets delayed because there's no trust on your provider. For instance, you can have something as simple as dandruff. Okay, if you're not cultural competent, then the patient is going to suffer the consequences. When somebody has dandruff, as a provider, I cannot tell a Black patient, here's this shampoo, and you have to use it 3 or 4 times a week. That's not possible. Right. You know, the patient is not going to trust you from the get-go. The patient already knows, okay, this person doesn't know anything about me, my skin, or the way that I do my hair. Okay, so that is kind of like a cultural incompetency that immediately the patient is going to lose their trust, right? So, you know, on a Black person, sometimes even once a week, it's a lot to ask them, you know, so you as a provider have to find a way not only to transmit the message, but also to have the patient trust you and find alternatives to, you know, so, okay, you can't wash your hair that often. Okay, but let's try this instead, like a lotion, so that we can delay, you know, your scalp getting so dry and getting all that dandruff. Because the thing is too, like if you ask the patient to wash their hair 3 times a week, then their scalp is going to get very dry. I mean, that's why, you know, the Black people don't wash their hair so often, because it gets too dry if you do that. So, in terms of alopecia, that's one of the things I feel like women, especially the older women, were either misdiagnosed or delayed because they didn't trust their provider. And also, there's a type of, it's called, it's a cicatricial, the scarring type of alopecia that it's seen more in Black women. And for a long time, the thought was that this was due to the way that Black women did their hair, like the practices for the hair, like the hot comb, or the constant relaxers, or you know, wearing styles that were too tight, or like weaves, or you know, that wouldn't let the scalp like kind of breathe. Okay, and I feel that, you know, when I talk to other patients, I feel bad because, you know, like now there's more research, because there's more women of color going into dermatologists, and, you know, there's more knowledge about it. But this is this type of alopecia is due to inflammation. It's, you know, you see a lot of inflammation. You see scarring, you know, of the hair follicle. And the fact that it happens disproportionately in Black women, I don't think it necessarily is. I think those other things can contribute to it getting worse, but it's not the cause. And actually there's, you know, when I'm reading, I'm constantly researching and doing, because it's a fibrosing type of alopecia. It's thought to be linked to fibroids, the uterine fibroids, because it's an inflammatory response. Okay.
Oh. Yeah.
So there's research that's going on right now. And again, this is a type of alopecia that if you don't treat it early, it has detrimental effects, because it cannot be reversed. Because if the hair follicle scars down, if it's all scarred, you can't really open, you know, like that's it. There's scar tissue there. The hair will not grow. Right. So if you catch it earlier, then there's certain things that we can do to delay, you know, the expansion of the alopecia, and also, you know, like, and also you educate your patient better. I actually, because, you know, I'm Hispanic, I'm not Black, you know, and again, you know, when treating patients, sometimes I'll send the patient to a Black trichologist, because that actually that's somebody who's a cosmetologist that had extra training, like they have a little bit of a clinical training, but they actually take care of the hair. I take care of the scalp. Look, my thing is the scalp, right? What's going on? How do I avoid the patient from losing the hair? But actually, part of like what I feel of me to be culturally competent, I send the patient to somebody that knows about their hair. I don't know it all. I don't know. I don't have the same experience than you do. We don't have the same hair, and it's important to know, to understand that, but then refer your patient to somebody that knows. Okay. And I think that little by little, we can hopefully that, again, things are shifting, and, but that's another one that I feel like it gets misdiagnosed a lot, because, it's not because of just hormones or what we call androgenetic alopecia or this and that. This is this type of scarring alopecia. We see it disproportionately in Black women. And so we need more research on that, and we need to intervene early. And that's why, like I was telling Maya, Maya, this, I feel, the sooner we educate the patients, the young women and men, the more, at the end, we can avoid, damages that are, again, they're irreversible.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things she mentioned before the episode was that just how important it was to instill confidence and let, first to know that like my skin is beautiful, so I should take care of it. Because if you are like low in self-esteem and you don't think it's beautiful in the first place, you're not, being as attentive. You're just trying to grasp whatever is trendy to fix, quote unquote, what's going on.
Black skin is gorgeous. I don't, it's funny because, we're not going to get into the complexity of that. But, most people, even white people, they like themselves better when they have a tan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They go to tanning salons for like, so, but also I don't know, there's like, I feel like the glistening, the colors and as you go again, because there's different, gradients of melanin. Like, it's just so beautiful to see the different tones, and I just feel the skin is so pretty, and it just glistens in, and again, at the end, what good would it be if we all looked the same? That would be so boring.
Very boring.
That would be very boring. I like that we all.
It would be really boring. Come on.
Right.
But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one. I think that it's great that people look different. And I think that it's also great that you are helping in the research to figure out what works for all these different things. So that's awesome. One of the things that Maya and I have both come across recently is skin cycling, meaning like taking a process and dedicating days, I guess, to different aspects of your skin routine. What is your opinion on skin cycling, and is it beneficial for people of color specifically?
I think it's beneficial for everybody. I'm more of a routine type of person, but I do have a personal bias on that. I think if you don't have a lot of acne, or, you just don't need a dermatologist that often, that's not a bad idea. If it works for you, it's okay. Because cycling is usually, you have a day that you exfoliate, and then the next day you use a retinol. And then after that, you just let your skin kind of take a break. I would say while taking a break, make sure that you moisturize, cleanse, moisturize, and use your sunscreen. But if it works for you, I tell patients all the time, if something works for you, your skin will let you know if it doesn't like it. You'll break out, or you'll have a rash, whatever, or you'll see the inflammatory process. Your skin will express the inflammatory process. So if it works for you, that's fine. If you have a chronic condition, you have acne, I say you probably need to use a retinol or a retinol product more consistently, not just once a week. Okay. But if it works for you, I'm not into over exfoliation either. So the fact that you exfoliate once is fine. I usually tell people, like we were talking about when the podcast started, like about the astringents and all that.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the skin has a natural oil, right? It's natural oil. So that's why it's important to, another thing that I always recommend, don't take super hot showers. So the best analogy that I have for that, I learned from a dermatologist, and it was like a light bulb went, and I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to steal that. So if you have a plate, if you have a plate that has, I don't know, olive oil, butter,
okay,
whatever. In a Cuban household, it would be lard. Okay. And so, because we cook with lard a lot, and it's so good. But if you use just, like if you use regular water, or like lukewarm or cold water, it doesn't really rinse the oil, right? If you then do it like with scalding hot water, the oil, it will take care of not all of it, but the oil will go away, right? So that's what happens when you take super hot showers. You are depleting your skin of its own natural oil. And so it can get really, really dry. And this is most important with people that tend to have eczema or definitely, psoriasis too, but most importantly, eczema. In eczema, you have so much water loss because the skin barrier is compromised. So I say for everybody, if you don't want to have, I love it when people say, oh, my legs are so ashy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, don't take hot waters. Don't take super hot showers because that is not good for your skin.
That has solved a couple problems for us over here because I am my skin is so ashy. Yes, that is me, and I am known for it. But that was another thing. Like, I do moisturize my skin, but I also do take severely hot showers. I will dial back on the hot showers and still moisturize my skin. But the thought there was like, oh, your pores are open and so stuff will go in better. That's what people say.
Yeah.
But
lukewarm water is the best, I think. And it's interesting, to see things from a perspective of me being an immigrant. It's not that in Cuba people don't have eczema but people in Cuba have, I remember growing up, even people that have eczema don't have eczema as bad, but in Cuba we don't have hot water. It's a third world country, so we take. Plus, it's so hot. You want to take a cold shower, but I feel like that. Take my sister for instance. My sister and my dad both have psoriasis. Not severe case, but they do have psoriasis where they have to be treated. At least 2-3 times a year. And in Cuba, like my dad was saying, I didn't have this. He thinks it's the weather. It is the weather part of it. But he said, I didn't have this problem. And I said, well, here you're taking these hot showers. And wow. They take really hot showers. I'm sure my sister, I think she listened to me. My dad, likely not, but, cause he's my dad.
Yeah.
And why do I know? When you're the child, doesn't matter how many
degrees you got.
Degrees you have, you don't know anything.
You just do this for a living.
Exactly. And, but yeah, I think, thinking back, that's one of the reasons why probably is because we don't take, everything is cold. It's cold water all year round.
Wow. So we've learned, I can think of at least 4 things that I have to change.
Yeah, literally.
And do a little bit different because I always, even for the skin, the moisturizer, I always feel like, I'll keep putting on lotion and I'm still dry. So there's other things that affect it.
There's many things that affect it. I think the environment, the pollutants. I get that a lot, when I talk to patients who are from other countries, again, my family included, they're like, oh, my skin was so much better in my country. But I think it's not only just the water thing. I do think that, there are environmental pollutants just because there's more people in this country and, there's more of everything, there's more cars, there's more everything, there's more pollutants. And even the food, like that's another thing that I wanted to talk about, like the food. It's not the cause of you having acne or having dry skin or anything like that. But in terms of, I tell people always to think of in terms of inflammation, like the saying said, I remember my grandpa saying, you are what you eat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you drink more water, if you have a better diet, and you eat less processed food, then the microbiome of your gut is going to be healthier, and that's going to impact your immune system, and therefore that's going to impact your skin too. So in general, the better you are to your body, and more mindful of what you eat. And I'm not saying, everything in moderation is fine. I'm not saying that I don't like fried food. I love my fried plantains. I love sugar. I mean, who doesn't? Yeah. I love ice cream like everybody else, but everything in moderation. Mm-hmm. But you have to be mindful. I feel, especially after starting in, the younger you are, the better, but especially like after 25, I feel like, things really, what you eat really impacts, your body and your skin in general. That. It does big time. Even like, so I always think of it as inflammation. Our joints, with age, they get more inflamed. So imagine if you eat a bunch of things that are just going to cause this fire, this inflammation in your gut, right, that's going to impact the rest of your body. It will, for sure. Yeah. So there's also a lot of research going on right now about like the gut microbiome and how tied it is to our immune system. So I think all those things are interesting. And I do think that's why, people from other countries, myself included, I get it, when the way that we eat in our countries and the food is fresher in general. There's not a lot of processed food. I feel better. Yeah. When, even though I'm eating the same, I'm eating, fried stuff, when I go to Cuba, I eat fried plantains and things like that. But, like it's incredible. I do feel this change. Like, I feel like I'm more energetic. Maybe that be my psychic too, because it's home for me, but, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's good to keep in mind. Like, it's not just about what you apply. I think oftentimes we think like we need to buy like this product that is, going to solve it all. Right. But it is a lot. Everything shows up on your skin. Like if you're eating horribly, that's going to have some impact on your skin. And when we think about products, I know especially like in the Black community, we have like these products that, especially in moisturizer, that are like holy grail kind of level, like, shea butter, cocoa butter, like that is, those are like the end all be all. Did you put on cocoa butter? Like I remember growing up, like, and I had like something on my skin and my grandmother would recommend like, just put some cocoa butter on it, put some shea butter in it. So it'll go away. So can we talk a little bit about like those natural butters? Are they like as good as we've been taught that they are for our skin?
I think they're good in their purest form. I'm laughing because, every culture is like, in the Hispanic culture, it's like big paper rub. It's the one that fixes everything. Yeah. But I think in a more pure form, they're probably, they're good. I think usually and it's hard for the person, again, for everyday people, even for myself. Sometimes, patients bring me, the bottles of things, and I have to look at the ingredients, and I have to kind of like think of what I learned in organic chemistry many years ago, and thinking, okay, this is an alcohol, this is, and you kind of like break it down, but it's a lot. Sometimes I have to look it up. Even myself, I have to look it up. I think in general, the more ingredients everything has, the worse seems to be. But shea butter is good. Actually, we have a product that is our own product in the practice that it's kind of like a botanical product that has shea butter, and it's actually pretty good. I use that. But no, in general, like there's products, shea butter products and cocoa butter that is really good. When I was pregnant, I used the cocoa butter on my belly, myself. But in general, you know, I recommend products that don't have a lot of fragrance and or tons of ingredients, or like things that are packed with ceramides. And, you know, usually, you know, people think, oh, the more expensive products, a lot of the expensive products don't, are not great. And actually, you know, not just, you know, there's another podcast that I follow. It's called The Chemist Confession. It's these two ladies who are chemists, and they worked in the beauty industry, and now they have like their own, they, you know, they talk about it, and I like that because they break it down, and it's really good, and they're very good at explaining things too. But things that have a lot of ceramides, it's what you're looking after. So products like that, you know, Cetaphil, CeraVe is one of my favorite products. I use CeraVe products myself a lot. I use a lot of Eucerin products myself because they're packed with ceramides. And these are not, you know, these are like, you know, drugstore products, over the counter, like nothing, like I don't have. I think that, you know, like I said, the one thing that I have that I love is my sunscreen and with SkinCeuticals. They also have a really good vitamin C, the CE ferrolic serum.
Oh, yes,
it's really
I've seen
good.
that.
It's really pricey. So like I usually give people like different, I like La Roche-Posay products are kind of like in the middle, and those are actually pretty good. And they have a good vitamin C serum as well. We have a line at, it's not our line at the practice. You can also get it online. I like to use Aven products. Aven, Avene. That's a, Aven. And I also like Glytone products. They have the vitamin C serum that I use is from the Glytone, and those you can find online. They're pricey, kind of like in the middle. They're not super expensive. I know that, there's, you know, SkinCeuticals is really good. The soap products are pretty good too. But, you know, let's be real here, you know, like we're heading for a recession, and like there are products that, you know, I would say for every budget, there are good products. So when in doubt, like always ask a dermatologist, like, it's, you know, we know which ones. I mean, that's what we do. This is what we do for a living, and we see it. You know, we treat people, and we know what works, what doesn't work, and not everything works for everybody too. You know, there's a lot of trial and error. But in general, you know, we can tell you for whatever your budget is, there are good products for every budget. You don't have to buy the most expensive things. And also, I feel bad because we have young patients now that sometimes they come to me and they have so many products. They have like, I don't know, like a 17-step routine.
Process.
And, you know, but that's a lot. You know, I always tell, you know, keep it simple because you're overwhelming your skin, doesn't know which way to go. There's so many products. That over plus, and add to that the makeup. I think that's why I see a lot of acne right now. Like it's incredible, but it's like these young girls who are so beautiful. And I'm like, you know, 13, 14, and they're using makeup, and I'm thinking, why? This is the best you're going to look in your life. And and you're wearing makeup, for God's sake. It's a crime. So when in doubt, just see a dermatologist, and you know, not just a dermatologist. I have to say, you know, I personally, like, I'm very inclusive. You know, like there are estheticians that are really good. You know, we have an esthetician who's amazing as well. So there are places, you know, that where even the estheticians have very good knowledge. And I think in general, like, so the good advice would be from people that will tell you the facts, and they're not very pushy, because I can tell you, get this, get that, blah, blah, blah. But again, it's more about trust. So like, I feel like if you go to somebody and if you want to get a feeling, you know, just tell them, okay, why is this good for me? What does this product have? What do you recommend? And what does it have that is good for me? Because sometimes, you know, and again, this is not to put, like the young generation now says, to throw shade or anything like that. But, you know, if you go to a store and there's somebody, I don't know, in high school telling you, you know, buy this, buy that. I mean, and it's not that they don't know. I feel like, you know, everybody can say something and contribute to giving you good advice, but you want to have it from somebody that knows their craft or went to school for it, and to kind of break it down for you and as to why it's good, not because, you know, some TikToker, you know, is saying, oh, you know, buy this worked for me. I mean, at the end, let's face it, you know, they're getting paid for it. So it's like everything, you know, you can learn from everything. And at the end, I tell patients, you know, you will know, your skin will let you know if he likes it or doesn't.
Yeah, there is such a pressure and an influence, I would say, specifically around skincare, like, especially like growing up, like we were inundated with those, what is that? Oh my gosh. It was like this acne solution, Proactive.
Oh,
we couldn't turn to the left or the right without seeing a Proactive commercial and thinking that you need all those things. And then from there, it was like this big push towards like Korean skincare. And there was like 18 steps. I felt influenced to that. Let me tell you, I felt like I needed an essence, a serum, a this, a that, a that. And it's like, you really, like you said, you really need to listen to your skin and not feel like because someone is marketing to you that you need it, that it actually applies. Exactly. That's a really good thing.
And especially the young girls, I tell them, you know, like, what about when you were younger, before you even started using all these products? If your skin looked better because you were doing less things to it, that's your answer right there.
Yep. Yeah. Go back.
You know, you start go back to the basics and say, you know, when you were not into buying all these beauty products and you feel like your skin got better, you know, that's just not hormonal. That is because you're putting so much in your skin. Or sometimes they're over exfoliating or just using too many products, or they're using makeup all day long. Like, why do you need makeup for school? I mean, it's, you know, I get it, you know, for the prom or like going out or something like that. But, you know, again, like, I get it. That's part of growing up. It's not that I didn't like makeup when I was younger. My parents didn't let me, you know.
Mine either.
Facts.
There was no makeup.
Why do you
there
need
was
makeup?
no makeup. Like, why you need makeup? You know, I couldn't, I was, you know, I am, originally, I'm very hairy, you know. But I remember I didn't shave my parents did not let me shave my legs until I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And it is what it is. But yeah, I feel that in a way, you know, that did help me. You know, I didn't have a lot of skin problems. And I'm not saying teenagers will have skin problems, you know, like I was fortunate, but, you know, my sister had horrible acne growing up. And, but again, you know, it's just a combination. You know, you're going through these hormonal changes and then you put in tons of stuff on your skin. That is, again, a recipe for disaster. Of course, your skin is going to be like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of the things that you're mentioning today. They click, they make sense, but we just don't pay enough attention or spend enough time. So I definitely think that when thinking about like, when was my best version, in my opinion, of me, I was using absolutely nothing. And it was because my parents were like, no, you can't do any of that. But gratefully so, because that allowed me to see my natural self as like, oh no, this was great. This is beautiful. The natural version, not the this product, and plus all the products that are on your hair that are trickling down and touching your skin. And all of the things that you're putting, the perfumes and the, you know, so once you start to add on and not really pay attention to the trickle down effects, similar to another podcast episode we talked about the things that you put in your hair that also affect what happens to your face. So there's just so many things that we need to pay attention to that a lot of them will go away if we just go back to the basics.
Yeah, go back to the basics. Talking about the hair thing, there's something called pomade acne, and it's from the kids that wear their hair with a bunch of gel, and then they put it like towards, like you see a lot of like acne on their forehead, and it's usually from the stuff that they put, because again, what makes your hair look pretty or stylish is not necessarily what I tell them, Your scalp is skin. It's not hair. The stuff that's made for the hair is not good for your skin.
Wow.
Those products are not made for skin. They're made for your hair. And you wash, your hair is supposed to be, washed, every so often.
Right.
So those products come off, but they're not good for your skin.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
That's good.
That's a really good way to look at it.
I tell them all the time, I think of your scalp as a extension of your face.
Yeah.
It's skin there too. That's what it is. And that's why we have a lot of issues with, scalp issues, because if you put tons of products on your hair, again, it makes your hair look pretty, but your skin does not like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've learned a lot. Number one, okay, I'm going to go over this one more time. It is cleanser, moisturize, sunscreen.
Sunscreen.
It is don't take super hot showers.
That's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt a lot. It is, what was the other one?
It was just be aware and pay attention to changes, not only in like your immediate face, but also like your nails in your hands. It's like, just be aware. And then I think another good takeaway is getting a skin physical every year.
Yes.
That's a really good takeaway. Like there was just so many things. There was so many things.
Yeah. And sunscreen is for everybody.
For everybody. And it needs to go on more places than just your face.
Everybody. And just talking about sunscreen, I always recommend sunscreen that don't make you, my phrase is always, they will make you look like a cupcake. So there is so the best sunscreens when you go to the beach are mineral sunscreens. And those they're heavier and they have that white cast, but if you froth them enough, that will disappear. But those are the ones that I recommend when you go to the beach. When for everyday use, Eucerin has great sunscreens. They have one now that is oil free, that is amazing, and it blends really good with your skin. Neutrogena has sunscreens that are sheer, and they also blend pretty good. The one that I use from SkinCeutical, again, it kind of gives you like a little glow. So I like it a lot for women, especially. La Roche-Posay also has sunscreens that are very sheer. Yeah. So there are many. And of course, they have the Black Girl sunscreen is amazing too. And one thing that I forgot to say, SPF 15 is
cut it out.
You gotta go cut it out 30 or over.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
that's a pro tip because I was just picking sunscreen.
Yeah. And wait, one other question on sunscreen quickly. So I know that a lot of like cosmetics products are like, it now includes SPF.
Yes.
In that case, can you combine those things? Like, can I put on a sunscreen and then put on another thing that has SPF, or should I only be using like one SPF product?
No, I'd say layer it.
Okay.
Because the ones that are on those products, they're not going to give you enough protection.
Okay.
They will not.
Okay.
So I always say put your one that is just sunscreen underneath, and then that's just a plus. But I mean, that product is not just,
designed for
there are, there's some hydrating sunscreens that are okay. But the ones that are like in cosmetics per se, I personally don't trust it 100% to just that be the layer of protection. I say put it on sunscreen, let it like sit there for a minute or two, and then you put on, your tint, there are some tint sunscreens that are sunscreens. They just have added tinting.
Yeah. But
But in terms of like cosmetic, like you buy, I don't know, a foundation that happens to have sunscreen. It has to be a sunscreen. If it's sunscreen that's tinted, but if the product is actually a sunscreen, that's better.
Okay.
That's
okay.
good.
Yeah. That's good. Awesome. Well, to wrap us up, we've learned so much. I think one of the best takeaways from today is that there are professionals that are looking out for people with skin of color, and there are people who are pushing the needle forward as far as the education, as far as the service, and the commitment to cultural competency in the area of skincare. I think it's awesome what you're doing. It definitely left an impression on me because we're here, and I just can't wait until people hear this episode and actually go see a culturally competent dermatologist that is able to guide them through their biggest organ, their most, physical feature that people look at. I think it's going to be really great for people to have that realization and to pay more time and attention to it. So we thank you for all of your knowledge today. We will try to Yes, absolutely. We will try to link some things in the description that we have talked about today so that our listeners are able to find you and to find some of the things that we've talked about. And we're always happy to have discussions like this to educate us and to educate our audience.
And one more thing.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
One more thing that I forgot to, because there's so many things because I can talk about this for like hours. But one more thing too is because we talked about skincare routines and everything, and we talk about medical dermatology a bit, but also I think it's important when you go into like to get cosmetic procedures, again, it's not the same. Not all the machines work for, most of the machines are for lighter skin people. There's like many machines, like for instance, an IPL, a dark person should not get IPL. It's a no. So always, even when getting cosmetic procedures, and it's not that, again, Black people, brown people, everybody can get Botox, this and that. But please, when we're talking about energy-based devices, always go and ask the questions. Do you treat dark skin people? Wow. What are the results? And don't be afraid to ask the questions because, again, there are really, really bad results when the person that is doing the procedure doesn't know the skin. Okay. I mean, even myself, like we do chemical peels, things like that. It doesn't always, the skin will surprise you. So you have to be very careful, I'm not saying that things will not go wrong. The thing is, if you go to somebody who's not a professional, then when there's a complication, you want that person. So when I have a person that has a complication for something that we did, even if I think I'm doing the right thing, I'm there for the complication. Exactly. I'm there to say, okay, this is what went wrong, because that's how we learn too.
Right. Yeah.
This is what went wrong, and this is what we need to do to fix it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the other important thing. It's not that things won't go wrong. It does. Darker skin is more complicated when it comes to cosmetic procedures. I can tell you that. But again, like if you burn somebody even with, I don't know, a laser that a hair removal laser that you think is safe and you had it on this perfect settings, again, you want to go to somebody that if there's a complication, they'll be able to respond.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't even think about all that.
The cosmetic side of things, like cosmetic sides. We're going to probably have another episode about that, honestly.
Because the laser hair removal is very popular.
I'm going to give you guys a little preview. I mean, we already talked about it, but our practice, we're actually going to have an aesthetic cosmetic center that it's part of the practice. It'll be a different entity.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I'm working on right now with Dr. Scales is to have a cosmetic, like kind of like not a med, well, it is kind of like a med spa, but it'll be more geared toward cosmetic procedures. But again, I can talk to you guys about all this forever, but like I'm thinking about incorporating things like to treat keloids and different things that are, they're medical diagnoses, but the cosmetic aspect of it, you have to work on it, but it's going to be geared towards skin of color and solutions for people with the skin of color, because we need that in the cosmetic part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, if you don't mind, before we wrap, sharing where people can find your practice and the practice that you work at, so that we, like, if they are in the area, they can tap into all the knowledge that you've provided.
So there is, our practice is in Durham, just a few blocks from South Point. It's called the North Carolina Center for Dermatology. It is right on Fayetteville Road. Okay. The number is 919-484-9551. Awesome. And we do have, our staff is bilingual too. So like, bilingual, Spanish speaking patients can too. Anybody can. Okay. I'm not, I have patients from all over the world. But that skin of color is our thing. It's what we the majority of our patients are patients with skin of color. And our website is ncdermatology.com.
Okay.
Also, my Instagram handle is at Anay, Anay Derm PA. And the one for the practice is very simple. It's at NCDerm. The owner of the practice, he's been in practice for 26 years.
Wow.
And that is Dr. Jeffrey Scales. He's amazing. He's my mentor. He's an amazing doctor. And resources. So there is the American Academy of Dermatology,
Okay.
where you can find, like practices and everything. But also there is the Skin of Color Society.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Which is, the name says it all. And when you go to their website, the Skin of Color Society, when you go to their website, they have a tab that is, I wrote it down so that when we forget, it is Dermatology Ed. And within that, when you click on that tab, there's a patient education, and you'll find topics that affect mostly, conditions that affect mostly skin of color.
Oh, wow.
And when I talk about skin of color, I'm not talking about just, we're talking about Asian, Hispanic, Latinos. And also one thing that we cannot forget, sometimes people look one thing and you have to, the background matters. Okay. And that's why we have disasters too, especially with cosmetic procedures. One of my cousins who's, light, she got burned with an IPL recently.
Wow.
And, yeah. So where your origins matter too. So in the United States, the population is very diverse, and it's just the projections are that most of the people in the United States in 20 years, everybody's going to be mixed.
Yeah.
Right. So your DNA matters too. Just because a person looks a certain way doesn't, that matters. And the things that you see on the skin, but also I think it's more impactful on like cosmetic procedures and especially energy-based devices. That is going to be, very, very important looking into the future. So, and even genetics, there are things that, people are genetically predisposed, according to their ethnicity as well. So it's not just a black and white type of thing. There's like the people in between. And I think that the Skin of Color Society, educates the patients a lot on that.
That's really good to know. We will make sure to include
that.
all of that information.
I can send you guys that.
Yes, awesome. Please do.
Yeah, this was a very helpful discussion. We'll include everything so we can spread the word, and everyone will be better for it. Thank you guys for watching another episode of The Beauty System. Please don't forget to do all the things like follow, share, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to our podcast. Don't forget to check all those buttons so you can follow up on our next conversation that we have about skincare, or our follow-ups on this conversation. Yeah. You can find us on Instagram at The Beauty System. That's The Beauty Sis, like hey sis, and STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and math. Thank you all for joining.
Bye sis.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Beauty System podcast. If you haven't had the chance yet, please like, rate, subscribe, do all of the YouTube and podcast things so that more people can learn about the science behind their beauty.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at The Beauty System. That's The Beauty Sis, as in hey sis, and STEM as in science, technology, engineering, and math. Bye sis.
Bye sis.